Hello and welcome to another edition of MLB Pro Happy Hour. Today is July 27th. It is a wonderful Friday evening here in the second half of the season. The trade deadline fast approaching next Tuesday. Before that, though, we have a upcoming weekend of full slate of games of action across the league. And I want to begin by taking a look at those games and matchups we have this week. In particular, I wanted to highlight three series that come to the forefront in my mind. I want to begin with what's going to be Game 2 tonight of a four-game series between the Los Angeles Dodgers and the Atlanta Braves. Last night, the Dodgers beat the Braves 5-0, scoring 5 runs in the ninth inning off of Braves closer Dennis Moore. Dennis Moore has now allowed 3 runs in 3 of his last 6 appearances. In Game 2 tonight, the Dodgers are going to throw 13-3 All-Star starting pitcher Parker Markle against 9-7 Matt Barnes. The Dodgers have won 9 of the last 11 games started by Markle. Markle's 7-2 on the road with a 2.96 ERA in 11 games started. He's going up against Barnes, who's been a hard luck loser much of the year so far this season, going 3-5, albeit with an ERA of 2.38 in 10 games started at home. Barnes' stuff has still been electric, 9.8 strikeouts per 9 innings at home. On Saturday, we have Phil Hughes against Martyris Cadet. Cadet has been the subject of trade rumors recently, having recently been told to the media by Brenton that both Cadet and Sunday starter Tyler Pill are on the block. It's unclear at the moment what the Braves are hoping to acquire with either Cadet or Pill, but it will be interesting to see how they both pitch as they are subject to trade rumors. And on Sunday, the Dodgers have Tom Robson against the just recently mentioned Tyler Pill. The Braves have won 8 of the last 9 games started by Pill. It'll be interesting to see if they can keep things going in games started by him. Before we get to Sunday, though, we have tonight's game. The Braves come in tonight losers of 2 straight. Now they sit 2.5 games back of the Mets. And it's a crucial remainder of this series because beginning next week, the Dodgers begin a road trip with 4 games in New York against the Mets. If the Braves don't figure things out this weekend against the Dodgers, it could be a 3-4 game deficit before they know it. And heading into New York, if you're a Braves fan, you want to be as close as you possibly can to the Mets because that division lead could grow in a hurry. On the flip side, the Dodgers are now just 1 game under 500. While they're 8 games back of division-leading Colorado, they're just 4 games back of San Diego for the final wildcard spot. The Dodgers are kind of in that awkward position. Are they buyers or are they sellers as we approach the trade deadline? Some are suggesting today that they may be in the hunt for starting pitching. At the same time, if this series goes south in a hurry, what are they going to do with the likes of Phil Hughes? The Dodgers need to stay within contact with the Padres in the wild card race if they want to make noise at the trade deadline. The second series I'm interested in this coming weekend involves 2 NOS teams. You have the Arizona Diamondbacks traveling to Petco for 3 games against the Padres. The Diamondbacks are 2 games under 500, yet just like the Dodgers, they're just 8.5 behind the Colorado and just 4.5 behind the Padres. The Diamondbacks are 12-9 this month, 28-21 over the past 2 months. Their starters' ERA ranks 3rd in the National League. They come into this series with the bottom 3 in their order scheduled to pitch. That said, tonight's starter, rookie Andrew Morales, is 4-5 with an ERA of 3.34 in 15 starts. He has struggled on the road somewhat, going 2-4 with an ERA of 4.29. A quality start from Morales could give the Diamondbacks the momentum they need to make a push here against San Diego in this series. On the other side of things, San Diego comes into this series struggling of late. The Padres are 6-14 this month. They just got swept on a 6-game road trip to begin the second half of the season. On the road trip, they had 3 games with 3 one-run defeats on the series, including losing to a walk-off grand slam in the final game of the road trip against the Mets. Recently, all-star outfielder Giancarlo Stanton has been slumping. He's 2 of his last 11 with 0 RBIs and 5 strikeouts. Pitching matchups for the series include tonight Andrew Morales against Padre Manuel Reyes. Saturday, the D-backs throw Zach Rivera against Broderick Wilson. And Sunday's matchup is Michael Wacha against Jake Odorizzi. The final series that is worth mentioning as we hit into Friday night's action involves the second and third best winning percentage in baseball, as the Angels host the Mariners for 3-game series. The Angels currently lead the Mariners by 1 game. The Mariners are currently up 2 games on Toronto for the top spot in the wild card. Seattle just has 3 games ahead. After this, they have a series. Excuse me, I'm losing my mind here. Seattle's just 3 games ahead of Texas, and Texas has a series against Houston. So let me repeat that there. The Angels are 1 game up on Seattle for the division lead. The Mariners are 2 games up on Toronto for the top wildcard spot. Despite having the 3rd best record in baseball, the Mariners only have a 3-game lead on a wildcard spot above fellow AL West team Texas. And Texas is taking on the rebuilding Houston Astros. As far as the Angels and Mariners go, the Mariners lead the season series, having won 7 of 12 games. The Mariners are expected to activate outfielder Mark Baker for Friday night's game. Baker is coming off a stretch where he's missed the last 3 weeks of games with a sprained finger. If Baker is indeed activated for tonight's game, it'll be the first time the Mariners have both Baker and Manny Machado in the lineup together. Since coming over from Boston, Machado's power has resurfaced, having slugged 4 homers and 57 at-bats with the Mariners. His slugging percentage is nearly 80 points higher than it was in Boston. That said, his average is only at .228. I think when Seattle acquired Manny Machado, they expected a little more than that. They expected Machado to be another real threat in the middle of the order. And now that they have Baker back, you still have Silva in the lineup. Ike Davis has continued to play well. Jason Castro had a 2-home run game recently. They need Machado to pick that average a little bit higher. Just as the Mariners have been dealing with an injury to Mark Baker, the Angels have also been dealing with a sidelined outfielder. Nomar Mazara, of course, was hurt prior to the All-Star break. And then on top of that, he had an oblique strain during his first rehab assignment. He's likely to miss another couple of weeks from the Angels. While Mazara was out, I think there was some doubt who was going to step up for the Angels. While there's plenty of offensive options, the guy that has done the most over the last couple of weeks has been Masutaro Oyashi. In July, Oyashi has 8 homers, a third of his season total, while hitting .351. Another reason to be excited about this series is we're going to see 2 of the best pitchers in the American League. It looks like Friday night we should see Ryan Copeland of the Angels, who currently sits 8th in the American League in ERA, 3rd in wins, and 5th in strikeouts. And Copeland started big. The Angels are coming off of a series against the White Sox in which the White Sox beat up the back end of the Angels' rotation. Rod Barajas relied heavily on both Paul Erickson and Kenley Jansen. The Angels' bullpen comes in tired. They need a strong start from Copeland to give the bullpen a rest and to give some breathing room to a potential 2-game lead or division tie going into Saturday's matchup, where the Mariners appear to be throwing Nathan Eovaldi. And Eovaldi, of course, the American League All-Star Game starting pitcher, the AL leader in ERA, wins 7th in strikeouts. It's a very important series for both teams, and I think the Mariners have the edge. The Mariners were off both on Monday and Thursday. The Angels have not had an off day since the All-Star break ended. The Mariners are fresh, the Angels aren't. It'll be an interesting series there. Elsewhere in the league, we have the Minnesota Twins taking on the Boston Red Sox tonight. Wilmer Font against Daniel Winkler, the scheduled starters. The Tampa Bay Rays at 53-50 head to Baltimore to take on the MLB Pro's best Baltimore Orioles, 70-35 and 37-17 at home on the year. You have Ruby De La Rosa going for the Rays and Lucio Cruzado for the Orioles. AL West matchup, Texas Rangers against the Houston Astros, Reginald McMillan and Shi Fu-Fung. We have the Kansas City Royals traveling to New York to take on the Yankees, James Paxton and Kyle Cody. The Cleveland Indians are in Detroit. little AL Central matchup. Ubaldo Jimenez takes on Josh Johnson. Johnson 8-7 with a 2.87 ERA. In the final American League game tonight, we have the Toronto Blue Jays taking on the Chicago White Sox, who return home, Justin Verlander and Cody Ponce. Over in the National League, we have the New York Mets, best record in the National League, taking on the Pittsburgh Pirates, Zach Lee against Garrett Cole. The Chicago Cubs take on the St. Louis Cardinals, Cisco Silva against Jeffrey LeBlanc. That'll be an interesting series. Earlier in the week, of course, the Cubs had a couple of back-to-back ninth-inning rallies against the Cardinals bullpen in Houston Street. Can the Cubs continue their luck against the Cardinals? NL East, Washington Nationals travel to Miami. Mark Davies against John Lamb. The Philadelphia Phillies take on the Cincinnati Reds. Brandon Beachy against Martin Perez. A little interleague action as the Oakland A's travel to Colorado. Nick Robinson against Ronald Dunham. And the final series taking place this weekend is the Milwaukee Brewers visiting the San Francisco Giants. Tonight's action, we have Josh Tomlin, 3-6, 3.72 ERA against Zach Greinke. Well, the Brewers are first place in the National League Central at 49-56. They have really struggled on the road this season. 15 games under 500, 18-33, while the Giants are 9 games over 500 at home on the year. Can the Brewers get things done, or will the division race in the Central tighten even more? Of course, beyond the games on the field this weekend, we have action elsewhere. And that, of course, would be with the trade deadline. The trade deadline is Tuesday. Who's going to be dealt? Who's going to be brought in? Who's going to be shipped out? Who's going to be the difference maker for teams making playoff pushes? Sorry, looking at your chat. No worries, Pittsburgh. Those were scheduled starters. I don't have access to the exports, so I can't tell you who changes to those schedules are, but all should be well if you have exported. Anyways, back to the trade deadline talk. I'm sorry about that. The biggest question, I think on everyone's mind, frankly, is what are the Detroit Tigers going to do with Steven Strasburg? There's 3 options. You try and re-sign Strasburg. That said, some have been told that the Scott Boras effect is well in play here, that he wants Strasburg to test free agency, or at the very least, Strasburg wants no part of Detroit. Whether this is true, no one's quite sure, but I've heard from multiple sources at this point that Strasburg wants out of Detroit. So that's option 1, is convince him to re-sign. Option 2 is you go the qualifying offer route. You play out the season, you say, okay, go, but we're going to slap the qualifying offer on you. While we've seen this in the past where teams have been shied away from free agents with a qualifying offer, I think it's safe to say that's not going to be the case with Steven Strasburg. Someone will sign Strasburg even with a qualifying offer. So if you're the Tigers, you take that pick between rounds 1 and 2. You grab a prospect, problem being he's nowhere near ready. Option 3, you trade in between now and Tuesday. The success of the past years is gone. You have an aging roster. You have lost the financial feasibility of re-signing him to big deals when you already have the likes of Josh Johnson signed at $31 million for 5 more seasons. You have Joey Votto contract just getting richer and richer over the next 4 years. Brian Wilson at the back end of their bullpen making $16, $18, and $20 million. Aging Ryan Zimmerman still at $18 million. It just doesn't seem realistic for them to keep him. So you got to trade him. And as your team's getting older and as things aren't working out, you just saw the trade of Joe Mauer. You're 12th in the American League in ERA, 12th in starters ERA, 13th in bullpen ERA, 12th in runs scored. Your offense isn't any better, 13th in the American League in batting average, 15th in slugging percentage, 12th in runs scored. There might not be a better piece to rebuild around than trading Steven Strasburg. What do you get for him? What can you ask for? We forgot about this. Steven Strasburg's hurt. He's not helping a contender this year. He's a pending free agent. Can a team re-sign him? It's a tough ask. That said, I spoke to someone close to the situation and was told that the Tigers are looking for a near-ready prospect or Major League Baseball player who can contribute as early as 2019. Well, you still have Josh Johnson, you still have Brett Anderson, you still have Brian Wilson, you still have Joey Votto, Ryan Zimmerman. You're still in somewhat of a win-now mode, even as you prepare to get rid of Strasburg. The Twins aren't going anywhere. The Royals, I don't know about the Royals. I don't think they're going anywhere. The White Sox are only getting better. And Cleveland's always finding ways to try and get better as well. So you got to find something. In order to find the right team to make a run at Strasburg, I kind of thought of it this way. It's got to be a team that's focused on next year. Again, he's hurt. He's not going to help you. It's got to be a team that has money, just not re-sign them. And 3, it's got to be a team that has something to give back to the Tigers. So I went across the league, and here are the teams, to me, that have a legitimate shot at Stephen Strasburg. I want to begin with the Atlanta Braves. While they're loaded at starting pitcher already, they have indicated a willingness to trade one of Cadet or Tyler Pill. They've also floated the names of top pitching prospect Sidney English, English being a top 50 prospect in the league. They have additional high-end pitching prospects in Jerome Hill and recent draftees Carter Parker and Blaine Knight. While Parker and Knight aren't ready to help Detroit next year, the others would. Cadet Hill, Cadet Parker, Cadet Knight. If you're Detroit and you add 2 high-end pitching prospects and you lose Stephen Strasburg, it's probably worth it. If you're Atlanta and you're always fighting the New York Mets, why not make the move? Why not do something that can get you over the hill next year? And to do it with the ability of not having to compete against others financially in free agency, it makes sense. You have Mark Appel entering the final year arbitration in 2019. Maybe you're playing things a bit conservatively if you in the sense that you add Strasburg and then Mark Appel becomes available next season, and you're able to buy cheap on Strasburg and sell high on Appel a year from now. The Braves are definitely one team I'm keeping an eye on with Strasburg. The second team I think might be a surprise to some, it being the Chicago Cubs. Hear me out though. What better way to rebuild than by pairing Strasburg with Mark Sorensen in 2019? Sure, injuries have rattled the division. It's tough to say what that division is because of the amount of injuries they've had, especially in Cincinnati and St. Louis. But here we are, late July, and the Brewers lead the division at 7 games under 500. The Chicago Cubs have fielded a roster of nobodies, of Rule 5 draft picks all season long, and they're only 10 games out. Signing Stephen Strasburg, trading for Stephen Strasburg and re-signing him, are the Cubs not instantly the favorite in 2019 in that division? Who would they give? Well, they have top 10 overall prospect Ed Harris, 25-year-old outfield, blazing speed, quick bat, puts in long hours. He's always thinking about the team, his teammates. He gets along with everyone. The Cubs only have a projected payroll of next season of $34 million. They have the money. They have the market. Do they have the interest in making a big splash like Strasburg? I don't know, but I'm keeping an eye on them. Just like the Cubs, another team that I think we can't ignore, and that's the Houston Astros. Attendance in Houston this year is at just over 13,500 fans a game. It's down 2,000 fans from last season. They need someone to put seats in the ballpark. Strasburg would put seats in the ballpark. While there would definitely be questions about does Strasburg want to re-sign with a team that sits in last place that's rebuilding. But if we're talking about the future, again, this isn't a move for this season. Strasburg's not helping anyone this season. Why would you not want to join a team that has more prospects than anyone? And not just prospects. We're talking elite, grade A, blue chip prospects. The core's not going anywhere. Houston's got guys already signed or just through arbitration in their first 6 years of service control. They don't need to pay anyone. If you're Detroit, again, you're not going to get what you were necessarily looking for, immediate impacts, and guys that aren't maybe going to help you next season. But the likes of Mickey Moniak, Alonso Carbajal, George Keiko, they're all bats that could sit, if not at the top of the Tigers system, really high up there. Pitchers, Dale Groves, Juan Davila, Ramiro Solano. There are other names the Tigers should go after. If you could, two of those, you've come out ahead. And if you're Houston, you have all these other minor leaguers just waiting. 2019, 2020. You bring them up, and you have Steven Strasburg at the top of the rotation. That's awfully attractive. And again, the potential to buy low on Strasburg. Having sold James Kaprielian recently and gotten a load of prospects back, are you willing to take the risk of Strasburg re-signing in Houston? It'd be a tough sell for Matt Wells, but I think it's one that they at least have to internally discuss. The next team, I think, on the Strasburg radar, it's the Los Angeles Angels. They're set to lose Jordan Lyles, Aroldis Chapman, possibly Jordan Walden, and Kenley Jansen at the offseason. They're a win-now team. They were losers of a bidding war last offseason with the Giants and Daniel Slayer. They were willing to spend money last season. Could they be proactive and make a move for Strasburg and lock him up prior to free agency, not have to deal with other teams? Could the likes of Daniel Paolini or a package built around high-end prospect Anthony Kerr get the job done? Again, it doesn't help the Angels this season, and maybe that's where their focus is. Dealing with the Seattle Mariners, Texas on their backs, Toronto for a wild card spot. Perhaps they're too focused on improving this season, but if you add Strasburg to that rotation going into next season, it fills one of their giant weaknesses. 3 more teams, I think, are in on Strasburg. Next one being the Tampa Bay Rays. Attendance is flourishing at the Trop this season. Could the Rays look to make a splash with Strasburg? This season is lost. The Orioles and Jays have played phenomenal, I can't speak, baseball. Sorry about that. The Rays have been decimated by injuries this season, most recently with the long-term injury to Zach Potter. If the Rays could stay healthy in 2019, they're a real threat. You pair Giolito and Strasburg, and you could be what Josh Johnson and Strasburg were in Detroit. As far as pieces go, perhaps Detroit would be interested in giving Austin Bryce a change to turn things around. Bryce paired with the likes of AAA prospect Jose Campos or outfield prospects Will Ward or Claudio Melendez would be a welcome return for the Tigers. Again, I think that the Tigers maybe are thinking too hard about 2019, and maybe that target's closer to 2020. But I think there are prospects out there. And I think another prospect they could go after is Texas Ranger prospect Reginald McMillan, 24 prospect in the league. McMillan's seen the big leagues this year, 4 big league games with the Rangers. He's 2-0 and 3.6 ERA and 25 innings pitched. 5-pitch arsenal, strong minor league track record. He has some concern about his arm as he started as a reliever. But maybe if the focus again is next year, fits what Detroit's looking for. As far as Texas goes, they have $37 million tied up next season between the player option of Tadakuni Fujita and the team option of Trevor Cahill. That's $37 million that, as of today, is not guaranteed into next season. While I would suggest and think it's likely Fujita picks up his option, it's not guaranteed. And you can get out of Cahill's deal and pay Strasburg that money. That's pretty attractive. And if you're trying to get over that hump that is the Angels and the Mariners, Strasburg's the way to go. The final team that I want to highlight that could make a run at Steven Strasburg. How about the Washington Nationals? Let's go full circle and send Steven back to his original team, the Nationals. Catcher prospect Ed Palmer's among the most talented hitters in the plate. He's got power bat. That said, he's perhaps best suited for the American League where you can split time at catcher, first base, and DH. They've already locked up Julio Figueroa and Raynel Villette long term. Maybe you add Strasburg and things in the future go well. Again, you're competing with the Mets and the Braves yearly. The Miami Marlins continue to play good baseball. The Phillies are loaded at pitcher. Strasburg and Villette, 1-2. Keep an eye on it. But all I know, between now and Tuesday, we're going to hear a lot about Steven Strasburg. And I think something's going to happen. I think the Tigers are going to find a way to find a deal that is more attractive than the qualifying offer route. In addition to Strasburg, of course, we have plenty of others potentially on the move between now and Tuesday. Ever since Manny Machado was acquired by the Mariners, a name I think some across the league expected to be moved was Starlin Castro. A recent local radio interview with a Mariner beat writer suggested that Castro is in fact in play. With Baker back tonight, Castro is likely headed to the bottom third of the lineup. Could you use Castro to upgrade an outfield spot of say, Bubba Starling, Aaron Hicks, or Xavier Macklin? You have Augusto Candelara, a second baseman who could take over for Castro, play across the infield. I think Seattle's in that tough spot, Castro having an all-star level season. But with Manny Machado, maybe they've done enough offensively that they can go upgrade elsewhere. And that outfield spot of Starling, Hicks, and Macklin has definitely been an eyesore at the bottom of the order. There are power bats in the outfield available. Castro for an outfielder and a reliever. Strengthen the back end of the bullpen, give you some depth. Keep an eye on things there. Staying in the American League West, two names that I think I don't quite understand why we've seen them on the trade block as of today, but I think they could be hot names, and I don't know how serious it is, but Kenley Jansen and Jordan Walden. We saw it with Daniel Schlereth in the offseason. Teams are willing to pay a high price for free agent relief pitchers. Schlereth got something along the lines of $15 million. Ishikawa came over from overseas. 6-year contract long-term, over $10 million a year. You see it every year. Brian Wilson a couple years ago, $16 million in Detroit. So if you're Jordan Walden coming off of a season-ending injury back in spring training, he's going to miss the year. He's got a player option at the end of the season. Does a team make a move on Walden today? You pick Walden up, sign him to a 2, 3, 4-year extension. You get him to player option year, guaranteed next season at only $5 million. Could be interesting. At the same time, the Angels have always built a strong pen under GM this current regime. They're potentially losing Aroldis Chapman and Kenley Jansen. Why would they move Walden? Why would they move Jansen? Why are they talking about that? It makes no sense. The price is expected to be high. Will a team do it? You can grab a closer in Walden like Strasburg. Not like Strasburg in the position, but in the sense that potentially pending free agents, and you don't deal with bidding war. It'll be interesting to see there. Other names to focus on here in the next few days. We have a pair of Dodger pitchers I think are worth keeping an eye on. We have John Danks, who split time in the bullpen in the rotation, and Phil Hughes, who's been traded twice already this year, first from Philly to Toronto, and then Toronto to the Dodgers. 33 and 32 years old, respectively. Back end of the rotation types, but they could be big additions to teams making a playoff push. I think there's another Detroit Tiger that isn't getting enough attention. That's Casey Crosby, rehabbing from a shoulder inflammation injury. He's 5-3 with a 3.75 ERA and 74 innings pitched, pending free agent. Why would you not want to take a chance with Casey Crosby at the back end of your rotation? Two more hybrid starting pitcher, relief pitcher types. Both happen to be located in the Bay Area. San Francisco Giant Drew Pomeranz, 2-2, mostly used out of the bullpen this year. Giants in some financial struggles after having spent a huge amount of money last offseason. It's highly unlikely that Pomeranz re-signs in San Francisco. The Giants, sitting in the middle of the division, having played nice baseball since the return of Cameron Maybin, and still well within in the playoff push, but maybe they'd be willing to part with Drew Pomeranz. And elsewhere, Oakland, a name that has been floated the last couple of weeks, and we know he's on the trade block, is starting pitcher Manny Benuelos. Two pitchers that could come in and fill a role for teams making that playoff push and instantly make teams better. I think there are some bullpen arms that are going to be moved between now and the deadline. I fully expect to see Bobby Jenks move from Chicago, the White Sox. He's pitched well for the White Sox. The St. Louis Cardinals remain in a very interesting position. They're 43-58. They're 16-21 in one-run games. They're 3-7 in their last 10. They're only 4 games out of first place. Let me repeat that. The St. Louis Cardinals are 15 games under 500 here in late July, and they're 4 games out of first place. That said, we know Houston Street's on the block, having blown a couple games last week. We saw Cardinal fans up in arms. We heard from the general manager suggesting that Street's performance is frankly unacceptable for the Cardinals. If Street's moved, though, and we're going to get to a couple batters on the trade market in a second from St. Louis, but how about relief pitcher Hector Santiago potentially being on the trade block for the Cardinals? Santiago on the season has pitched in 54 games. It is a 5-2 record, 1.78 ERA, and 25 1/3 inning pitched. Right-handed batters are 6 of 27. Lefties are 16 of 68. It's allowed 1 extra base hit to righties. He struck out 26 left-handed batters and only walked 1. 26 strikeouts, 1 walk. That's pretty good. Why not make a run at him if you're in the playoff push? If you're the St. Louis Cardinals, are you going to give him big money, the pending free agent? You could land quite a few prospects for Santiago. A name to keep an eye on. In addition, 2 more relief pitchers I expect to be heavily discussed between now and Tuesday. You have Houston Astro Michael Kahn, 1.1 ERA, 19 strikeouts, 7 walks, and 16 1/3 innings pitched for the Astros. And Philadelphia Philly relief pitcher Sean Tollison, 56 strikeouts, 13 walks, and 51 1/3 innings pitched. Tollison, though, is coming off of a stretch where he recently missed a couple games with a tired arm. What will that do to his trade value before the deadline? Well, I think they're definitely the bats, or the arms, bullpen arms and starters that are going to be traded between now and Tuesday, and players I think that you have options. You can mix and match it and find what you're looking for, whether it's a lefty or hard-throwing righty, a control guy at the back end of your bullpen, a bridge guy. I think there are options. As far as adding a premium bat, as far as adding something to the offense, in terms of players that I expect to be discussed or players to appear to be on the trade block, I think your options are much more limited. I think Philadelphia Philly Kirk Neuenhuis, 250 batting average, on-base percentage to 343, 11 homers and 300 at-bats. Plays right field and plays some center. I think he's someone who could be a 4th outfielder, a depth, do I have an injury for a couple of weeks got type of situation. Someone who could be big in the National League for a pinch hit come playoff time. Another outfielder we have on the trade block, Baltimore Oriole, James Baldwin, having a good year for the Orioles. The Orioles with a crowded outfield, though, still in the market to trade an outfielder. I think Baldwin is someone that could make a difference for a team in the need of a depth bat. That said, I think there are 2 hitters that have been put on the trade block that are difference makers, or guys that can come in, hit in the middle of the order, and make a team's lineup that much scary. And I think those 2 are fairly obvious. You have Erinori Arai of Tampa Bay, and you have Evan Longoria of the St. Louis Cardinals. If you're Tampa Bay and you have Arai in the trade block, obviously the asking price is going to be sky high. It'll be interesting to see what's done with him. As far as St. Louis goes, again, they're stuck. You're in that position. You're only 4 games back. You're right in the thick of things. But you're also 43-58. What do you do with Evan Longoria? $13.5 million this year, 32 years old. $15.5 million next season. 17.5 in 2020. $18.5 million guaranteed in 2021. A team payroll already at $147 million next season. $143 the year after that. Obviously paying Clayton Kershaw $35 million through 2022 before his player option kicks in 2023. Recently acquiring Prince Fielder, $24 million a year the next 2 years. Justin Upton, 30 years old, $18 million. Evan Longoria, though, leads the National League in on-base percentage, WAR, top 5 in runs created per 27 outs, leads the league in walks. What do you ask for someone of that caliber at this point of the season? And what does it say to your fans if you trade him? If you're St. Louis, I don't know what you do with Longoria, but it'll be interesting. If they're wowed by an offer, I see him being moved, and I see him making a big impact for whoever acquires him. Speaking of which, I want to revisit 2 trades that have happened here over the past month. I want to begin, of course, with a trade from earlier this week as the New York Mets added Joe Mauer from the Detroit Tigers for 2 prospects, Brandon Tewksbury and Dan Katz. Mauer's going to take over for Travis d'Arnaud behind the plate, an upgrade of on-base percentage from d'Arnaud's .263 to Mauer's .373. The Mets lineup just became that much scarier. They already ranked first in the National League in average, on-base percentage, and OPS. You still have Josh Wilcox in the middle of the order. You add Matt Dan Decker, you've gotten that much better. You use this acquisition to create separation in the NL East. Again, the Braves on a bit of a losing streak, the Mets having won a bunch in a row. 2.5 games, could be 4 coming into that series next week, with 4 in New York. The Mets, I'm not saying the Mets are ready to run away from the Braves, but they've put themselves in good position to take control of that division sooner rather than later. As far as Detroit goes, you had a dominant college closer in Tewksbury, second-round pick this year, throws upwards of 99 miles an hour. He has good movement on both his fastball and splitter. You have Dan Katz, a well-rounded first baseman, hitting .336 and 122 at-bats at Rookie League this year, the third-round pick of the Mets last year out of high school. It's a perfect trade for both sides. Mauer's obviously aging. He's not signed beyond next season. He was going to be traded. And to walk away with two prospects. One in Tewksbury that could be a dominant closer down the line, and Katz, a starting first baseman several years from now. A trade that worked out well for both sides. Another trade this season that has worked out well for both sides took place back on June 26th. The Blue Jays were looking for someone that could hit. They needed something. Jacob Julius wasn't cutting it. So what did they do? They brought in Don Winston from Cleveland. Ever since then, Don Winston has been Donnie Baseball 2.0. Since coming over, Winston has 13 homers in 20 games. He's driven in 25 homers, hitting .325, slugging .922 in his time with the Blue Jays. Winston has given the Blue Jays everything and more that they could have asked for. Despite that, the Jays are just 11-10 over the last month. Part of that has been the absence of J.D. Martinez, likely to return tonight. Martinez, all-star, hitting .320 with 17 homers and 72 RBIs. Harper, Martinez, Jesus Montero, Don Winston. You have all the starting pitchers. The Blue Jays are scary. Again, though, 11-10 over the last month. While everything appears to be working well, something's off. Will they continue in the right direction? Obviously, currently in a wild card spot. Tampa Bay appears to be, not Tampa Bay, Kansas City, taking a step backwards as of late. The team, I think, that is a real threat to both Kansas City and Toronto, and to the two front runners in the American League West right now is the Texas Rangers. Texas just playing tremendous baseball, made their moves earlier in the year. The American League West, East wild card race will be fascinating, and Central, the Twins and the Royals, will be fascinating the rest of the season. The final thing I want to wrap up with, before I get that, I'm in chat and haven't really been able to pay too much attention to what you guys are saying, but if anything I've missed, anything else you guys wanted added, quickly send me a PM before I sign off here in a minute. But I wanted to congratulate Wes Clements of the Tampa Bay Rays for picking up his first win as manager of the Rays. The Rays made a switch earlier in the week, firing manager Tommy Thompson. Thompson took over back in 2016, failing to get the Rays to the playoffs in his tenure in Tampa Bay. Wes Clements taken over, 60-year-old, previously the bench coach in Tampa Bay. Thompson has a strong relationship with pitcher Lucas Giolito, who expressed his happiness with the decision. When asked about the move, Giolito said, quote, "I'm thrilled to have Teddy lead us. He works hard and is always focused on the guys. He's one of the first ones here and one of the last ones to leave. We are in good hands with Wes." It'll be interesting to see how Wes Clements handles the Rays with their series of injuries and having a year in which they're going to finish in third place. They're sandwiched well between the bottom feeders at the moment. The Red Sox and Yankees both stuck in a bit of a rebuild mode. And obviously with the Orioles and Jays having phenomenal years. There we go, I got it this time. I don't know why I couldn't say it earlier. The Rays are looking to finish the year out strong, and it'll be interesting to see if Wes Clements will be their manager in 2019. That said, let's see. Houston's going to lower their ticket prices and play better as attendance continues to drop. Really hate to see it. We hear ticket prices going down, fans clamoring for the rush of prospects sooner rather than later. The future remains brighter than bright in Houston. So again, here we are, several days away from the trade deadline. Important series, playoff push. We have a lot going on here around MLB Pro. As always, thank you to those that submit questions, rumors, notes, all that you guys supply me. You make my job that much easier here as the anonymous GM. Thank you to everyone. Good luck at the trade deadline. I hope to be on Monday night with one more trade deadline preview, so get those trade rumors flowing. Good luck to everyone. Take care and good night.